What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Football Chatbox. My name is Ryan, and welcome to the Game Week 28 buy sell video. And we're going to be looking, obviously, this week at forwards, midfielders, and also defenders because it seems like people are looking for different types of players. But the main focus will obviously be, as you can see, Matheus Cunha. People who had Cunha, Mateta, they thought that they won't have any worries come game week 29, 28, could roll a free transfer. But here we are now looking to having to replace both of them and have plenty of worries as well. So we're going to be looking obviously at replacements for forwards, some replacements for midfielders. If you still have the likes of Ahmad, even Morgan Rogers, if you're looking to replace, and even defenders, where Lewis Hall could be maybe injured, you might have Lewis Hall and Munoz, and you might want to replace one of them. So we'll look at a few defender options as well. Now, last week we looked mainly at Morgan and Rogers replacements, and obviously he went and scored after multiple weeks of no returns. But the players we suggested were Brian Mbuemo, who got a return. Bruno Fernandes, obviously with the double digit, so he got a return. Bowen as well got an assist, an own goal, which was changed into an assist. So, and then we had Mitoma, Minte, and Waneri, who didn't return, who from the players we mentioned. And then we had Neto as well that we mentioned, so he returned. So basically, we had 4 out of the 7 return, slightly more than 50% in terms of a hit rate of returns. Forwards as well, if you watched the video before that, I did mention some forwards. These are the forwards I mentioned. And of the forwards I mentioned, obviously 2 of them are now suspended, which means we will remove them from the watch list. And we'll look at whether there are more new forwards that we can potentially look at that are not from this list for this week. So having said all of that, let's get straight into the video. All right, let's start with the defenders. Now, this is the last 4 game weeks defensive data that I've got, and as you can see, Arsenal, Palace, City, and Everton, along with Brentford, Liverpool, Fulham, are like on the top. And at the bottom, you got Southampton, Villa, Man United, Bournemouth, Newcastle, and Forest. Now, Forest obviously have had a slightly harder run. So once their fixture slightly improved, you're expecting it to be a bit more better, but they've got City this week, so it's a bit more tougher. Now, for this video, we're going to mainly be looking at game week 28, 29, and 30 mainly. I've got up to game week 31 here for the fixtures, so we're going to be looking at players that can fit in these at least 3 or even 4 game weeks, depending on when you're wildcarding. The reason I mentioned game week 28 to 30 mainly is because a lot of managers will be looking to either wildcard in game week 30 or 31 depending on their chip strategy. So you're looking for players mainly for like short term at the moment. That's kind of what I'm focusing this video as, because people are mainly looking for short term punts before they look to wildcard. So teams that do stand out in this short-term period, Bournemouth obviously, they play Spurs, Brentford, Ipswich, and West Ham, and then you've got Everton with Wolves and West Ham in 28 and 29, which isn't too bad. You have obviously Wolves with a really good run, but Matheus Cunha is out, so that means we need to look a few left field picks, and maybe you can wait 1 game week against Everton. Won't be the easiest of fixtures. Maybe you can wait just to see what team lineup as without Matheus Cunha. And then obviously Forest have a good game in 29 against City at home. I mean, I won't mind it because City defensively aren't necessarily the best team as well. And then there's obviously Palace with the blank. So if you're free hitting in 29, Palace is a very tempting option, obviously. And you've got Chelsea as well, who have Leicester this week, and Arsenal, who are also struggling to kind of score. So let's have a look at defenders. Now, I've got a few defenders marked here. And before we go into those defenders, actually, let's go into the defenders. So the main ones that, like I mentioned, I showed you the defensive data. Crystal Palace were up there. For those of you who are looking to free hit in 29, Munoz is a really good option to get now. They got Ipswich and Southampton with the blank, obviously. So if you're free hitting, this makes perfectly sense, like good sense to try and get him in if you're looking to get him in, and especially if you're free hitting. If you're not free hitting, and if you have the luxury to bench him, if we bring him in this week, then I would do it. Otherwise, I would not do it. I'll wait one more week. I mean, I will wait until game week 30 before you look to even get Munoz in. And the same thing could be said for Lacroix. Obviously, Lacroix is a more cheaper alternative into the Palace defensive route. But I prefer Munoz because of the more higher attacking threat. If you don't have the budget to get the Munoz, still want attacking threat, there is Tyrick Mitchell at 4.8, I think, at this moment. Kirkes from Bournemouth. Now, Bournemouth's defensive data was low, but they're playing Spurs, who could rotate a game because Europa League fixtures are basically this week and the following week, and the fixture against Bournemouth is obviously going to be in the middle of those two, and Spurs would want to prioritize the Europa League more than the Premier League fixture. So they could rotate against Spurs. Kirk is attacking fullback, and then they've got Brentford and Ipswich after that as well in 29-30. Very good option into a Bournemouth attacking fullback. If you wanted a Bournemouth cheapest as chips defender, James Hill. Now, this was mentioned by one of my subscribers, Andy Burton, who did bring his name across. He could be an option. However, I will do mention to be a bit cautious with it because obviously Zabani is currently serving another one more game suspension. So James Hill, obviously in the FA Cup against Wolves and also in the Premier League against Brighton, he did field as that centre half, as you can see over here. And when Zabani got that red card, he was in the right back spot. So before that, obviously he was injured, and also he's back from injury. Now, the only thing to worry about this is obviously that right back spot can also be filled with the likes of Lewis Cook. So you kind of need to be a bit cautious when you're going to get him in, because there's no guarantee that he plays the Brentford game by when Zabani should be back from suspension. So buy him at your own risk. Obviously, extreme budget, but buy at your own risk, because if he does play the Brentford game, then amazing. But if it's not going to play the Brentford game, then it's a very risky option to try and take, to be honest. So I thought I'll mention him for anyone who's really looking for like budget options. So yeah. Now, Everton defense. Obviously, Everton defense has looked good as well, as I showed you from the team defensive data or team attack, team defensive data. Fourth, obviously, Everton defense. So Tarkowski is obviously the one who would provide more goal threat. But if you're looking for a cheaper alternative, it would be Mikalenko. I'm assuming people already have Everton players at this point because of the double that they just had recently. So if you have Everton players, just keep the ones you have. If you don't have and you're looking for Everton players against Wolves and West Ham, not too bad to go and get one of these two. Tarkowski, obviously, if you want a slightly attacking threat from set pieces. Obviously, Mikalenko got an assist. First assist that he's had, I think, in this Premier League season, even though he's had one here. I think that was a fantasy assist. So, yeah, those are the two options. Now, Cucurella. The reason I've added him here is because he's playing Leicester and Arsenal. Leicester obviously haven't scored in a long time, or are struggling to score, and Arsenal also struggling to score. Two teams that are struggling to score, and then obviously Spurs in game week 30. Now, you have to keep in mind that both Arsenal and Spurs are going to be London derbies, so it's going to be a bit more cagey affair. But the attacking fullback, Chelsea don't necessarily keep clean sheets, but this might be an opportunity for them to potentially keep 2 clean sheets against teams that are currently misfiring at the moment. So there is an opportunity to go and get lucky in this case, I would say. So Cucurella is up there. If you want Colville for a cheaper price, but I still prefer Cucurella for the more attacking threat. And finally, Ent-Nouri. Now, Ent-Nouri, obviously, Wolves have the best fixtures. Everton, Southampton, West Ham, and Ipswich. Nouri is obviously the most attacking threat into that Wolves defense. Almost plays like an attacking player, to be honest. So a lot of managers, including myself, are going to be looking to get him in for even Trent replacements next week. So yeah, Nouri up there in terms of a player to look and get. Now, in terms of the data shows us a lot of Crystal Palace players. Mitchell, Lacroix, Guehi, Munoz, all up there, obviously sorted by XGI. A lot of Crystal Palace players are up there. They've been doing pretty well recently, so it's not surprising that they're up there. Cresswell is up there as well. West Ham have slightly improved, but the next two aren't the easiest for West Ham, if I'm not mistaken. They've got Newcastle and Everton. Won't be the most easiest of fixtures, so I probably might avoid that one. Diallo, obviously, make a case again like Arsenal defense attacking wise not looking great, but Man United as a whole are just shocking. So I wouldn't go there. Would not recommend. Robertson obviously wouldn't because Liverpool are blanking. You don't really need the same thing with Luka Dean as well. Aston Villa blanking. And then after that you got likes of Trent, Delete, Porro, Wan-Bissaka if you really wanted maybe West Ham cover, but next to same thing with Cresswell, not the easiest of fixtures, and then you have Milenkovic and Jed Spence. So not too much to see from here. Ain't Nuri at the bottom here, but you would expect him to obviously go up as well once the fixtures improve for Wolves, which is starting very soon. That's defenders. Let's move into midfielders. Now, I've changed the midfielders list a bit compared to the start of the video. Obviously, we've got Mbeumo, Bruno Fernandes, Bowen. I've still kept Mitoma. Keep an eye on his knee injury. The only reason I've added Mitoma is if you look at team attack, Brighton are currently second in the last 4 game weeks, so I've kept the Brighton lads. Crystal Palace on top there, Chelsea, Brentford, Liverpool, Wolves, and Spurs. At the bottom, you got Leicester, Southampton, Newcastle, and United, along with Arsenal and West Ham as well. Now, Mbeumo, Bruno and Bowen, obviously, you saw the attack, they were at the bottom, but these guys are the talismans for their teams generally. So when they do well, they most likely get the bonus, the bulk of the bonus as well. That's why I've got those two in there. Mitoma and Minte we've kept because Brighton's attack is really good. So definitely a team that is decent, that can get goals. Just have to monitor Mitoma's knee injury in terms of press conference. I've added Ismail Sarr and Eze. Same reason why I mentioned Munoz and Leclerc. It's only if you're playing the free hitting game week 29. Ismail Sarr obviously got the 15-pointer after a lot of people looked at selling him as well and did sell him. Eze, obviously, he hasn't hauled big recently, but he plays close to 90 minutes in most cases. So good opportunity if you're free hitting to get one of the Palace lads with Ipswich and Southampton as their next 2 fixtures. And then obviously Neto, we mentioned in the last video. Same like Neto, Bruno, and Mbeumo, Bowen, same reasonings as the last video. They're good options, good players, good fixtures at this moment. Now, Marshall Munetsi? I don't know how I'm pronouncing this, but this lad could be, keep an eye out for him now that Matheus Cunha is obviously out. He could play forward, but there is also Strand Larsen who's returned from injury. So you need to watch. This is why I wanted to wait and see how Wolves play against Everton. Just see what they line up with before going for Wolves player against Southampton. Because he could potentially lead the line or it could be Strand Larsen. So I'm not really sure. It's a 5 million option. It's a punt at the moment. I'd wait 1 more week just to get some information. Against Everton won't be the easiest of fixtures. So I think it's worth waiting just to see whether this guy is going to be playing up front or whether it's going to be Strand Larsen. I thought I'll just mention his name in this video. Now, in terms of data, you got Salah, Palmer, Ismail Sarr, Enzo Fernandez, Szoboszlai, Mbeumo, Minte. Ducre obviously missed the last game because of his wife was pregnant, so because of that. And then Xavier Kudus is also there, same as Bowen, but I slightly prefer Bowen. Kudus obviously is a differential punt, but the rest obviously Salah blanking, Ismail Sarr blanking, Enzo Fernandez, I don't mind it, but I still prefer like a Neto over him. Elanga is obviously someone who will enter the conversation from next week, not from this week. Just because this week City won't be the easiest of fixtures, that's why I haven't mentioned Elanga. Same thing with Gibbs White as well, Morgan Gibbs White. I mean, they're worth getting in if you wanted to. If you wanted for the next fixture, but I think you can wait for 1 more week. Bournemouth lads are not in here. I'm assuming you guys already have the Bournemouth lads like Clivert or Semenyo. Those are the 2 mentioned. I think I should probably add them in here just for the sake of it. But I'm assuming people already have their Bournemouth lads. So Clivert and Semenyo at the moment will be the more better options because Dango, his minutes could be a problem with Evan Nilsson back. So you kind of had to wait and see with Dango. If you have him, I wouldn't go selling him just yet. But I wouldn't go buying him as well, to be honest. So yeah, that's the Bournemouth lads as well I thought I would mention. So yeah, that's the midfielders. Let's move into the forwards. Now, forwards, Chris Wood, Wissa, Beto, and Marmoush were on the list I showed you at the start of the video. I obviously removed Cunha and Mateta. The new players I've added are Haaland. Now, Haaland obviously will come into the conversation because City are improving and City's fixtures are also going to get better. And they will potentially have a double come game week 36 or 33, depending. They have a decent FA Cup round in game week 29 as well. It's not the hardest, but won't be the easiest as well. But they might potentially progress. They're the favorites of the competition right now. So Haaland is going to be suggested quite a lot by a lot of people. The only thing is, if you can't afford a Haaland or you don't want to afford a Haaland, Marmoush is probably the alternative. Can he cover Haaland? Hard to say. Maybe, given that Haaland's form hasn't been that great recently as well. But if Haaland gets his form back, then everyone's just going to go and want him as well. So that's the one thing you kind of have to monitor and see. But yeah, Erling Haaland is up there because the fixtures are now getting better for Manchester City. Trent Larsen, same thing as I mentioned with regards to the midfielder from Wolves. Watch and see who is going to play number 9 now that Cunha is out. Cunha wasn't playing number 9. Cunha was playing number 10. So Stan Larsen should potentially still play number 9. The question is whether the other Wolves lad he will play the number 9 and Stan Larsen just behind him or not, or how it's going to work. I'm not really sure. There could be even like Sarabia who could enter that Cunha role as well. So we still kind of had to wait and see how Wolves line up. So I'd hold before investing in any Wolves players, but I thought I would mention this guy's name as well as a player to watch list, at least for now. Especially for those of you who are looking at cheaper replacements for your Endai, or even like you have Joe Pedro and you're like, I don't know how long Joe Pedro is going to keep playing. Welbeck is also back, so that's kind of why I thought I'd mention a Wolves option. And then Nketiah. Now, Mateta went off with, I think it was a concussion sub. So he obviously concussion protocols means he misses this week, but he should be back by game week 30. So this is purely a 1 week punt type player, unless Mateta is out for longer, which is probably unlikely, but this is purely a 1 game week punt. Nketiah came off for Mateta in the FA Cup, got himself a goal, obviously got a goal against Aston Villa as well. Purely game week 28, it's set up for him to do well. Can he return? Maybe. So it's definitely a 1 week punt, and especially if you're someone who's free hitting in game week 29 and wildcarding in game week 30 and you want a 1 week punt, probably the guy that I would probably look at. So yeah, those are your forwards. Chris Wood is probably someone I'm most likely going to be looking to get in for this week for my Matheus Cunha replacement. But I haven't made the decision just yet in terms of whether it's for Cunha or do I want to go for... I don't think I want to go for Wissa because I don't like the fixtures that much. It's either Chris Wood or even Marmoush potentially. I haven't decided exactly yet. I think I might go with Cunha. Chris Wood because penalties, playing they're at home as well. Forest, City should win the game, but I won't be surprised if Chris Wood can get a return as well. So we'll see how it goes, obviously. But that is the video. In terms of forwards, let me quickly wrap up, showing you guys the data. Same thing like the players I mentioned: Beto, Wissa, Chris Wood, Haaland. Obviously Delap and Raul Jimenez are there, but for some of the other players that I mentioned, Marmoush is on this list as well, and then there are a few others at the bottom. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are, obviously based on this list. And if I have missed any players, put them in the comments. And thank you all for watching. Make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers, so if you can help us to get there, that would be really amazing. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all for the podcast on Wednesday.